Hey everybody, it's Road Toad Racing. A little bit of a different video here. I've had a ton of questions and messages through the Facebook groups of how I have put a 459 into a wheel horse. So today I'm going to show you how I did it. How I had to modify things and so forth. So let's get into it. First off, this is not a direct swap. Not at all. My tractor started out as a 73 Raider 12, which had a Tecumseh 8 horse, if I remember correctly on it. I ripped that motor out, threw it away. I don't remember. But I think that's what it was. So, once I got the motor, I sat it down on the frame in the center and instantly realized, okay, it was too wide for my belts to line up. So I had to move it over, well, as we're facing now, to the right. So, once I slid it over, okay, now I have nothing to mount it to. Then the other thing I noticed was the pulley height was going to be an issue. So I knew I had to raise the motor up and move it to the right. So what I did is I took the old motor mount off the Tecumseh 8 horse. Of course, I had to drill new holes in it to make it mount to the Predator engine. And then we get down to how I mounted it to the frame. As you can see, the original factory hole, right here and right here, they were obviously way over. So I drilled new holes, put a bolt in here. I didn't put a bolt in here because it's too close to the edge of the frame. But I did the same thing on the back. Loaded it with some booger welds. Filled the holes with some more booger welds. Because I can't weld for shit. And then I discovered I had a problem. I couldn't get my bolts in. So I had to cut all that off, grind it, and take the motor mount off. Sorry folks, I'm trying to crouch down here. Because I could not get the engine bolts in. I couldn't get them up through the bottom of the frame. So I took everything off, inserted the bolts, sat everything down. Then I discovered, well, the bolts are too long. And then I hit the engine block. Well, now we got that problem. So I got longer bolts, or shorter bolts. Okay, that worked. Now if I ever had to get the engine off, I couldn't get the bolt head off. I couldn't get the nut off and drop it down because it was going to hit the frame. So I had to get even shorter bolts. So I did that. Now the threads are flush with the top of this nut. So once I figured that out, okay, I know now that these bolts are never going to be removable, so they're going to have to be able to drop down low enough for me to get the nut off and get the engine off. So I did that. I put lock washers on them, Loctite. Haven't had an issue at all with these bolts. You have to do it on the same thing on this side, front and back. Now the other thing you're going to run into is on this side you got to run a short bolt, which barely clears the frame, but you got to have the right length or it's going to hit the block. So that's another issue. Same thing on the back side. So there's that issue with the motor mounting bolts. Getting the engine slid over getting bolts in that'll fit and can drop down enough to get the nut off and be able to get the engine off. Okay, so once you got that figured out, alright, you got it mounted in here. Then you go to put your hood on and you find out, well, it ain't going to close because of that stupid Predator air filter box. So you're going to have to remove that. So we're going to go there next. Let me stand up here, folks. Alright, so I removed that air filter box. And I put on this air intake kit, which I got off that Jungle website, which comes with an adapter, the hose, the air filter. Doesn't come with this. I made this out of dryer hose. Put that on. Perfect, okay. Had to notch my hood though. Still wouldn't close. Had to do it. You can see the notch in my videos. Now maybe I'll show it to you here in a bit, because I'm going to show you the hood anyways. So I have to notch that out to make that work. Okay. Now we get the hood closing some. Now it won't clear the gas tank. Because your gas tank is probably about, I don't know, here. So you got to move it over. I think it was like 1.5 inches or so, roughly. I had to move it over to the left as we were facing it. So what I did, I used the factory mounts. I measured everything out, moved it over, re-drilled holes. If I remember correctly, I could only use 3 out of the 4 bolts. I couldn't use the 4th bolt, which I do believe is this one down in here. I couldn't use again. So you're going to have to move everything over, mark it, re-drill it. You're going to have to use some washers for spacers and everything else, but you'll get your tank moved over. I think it's like 1.5 inches. And then that'll clear your hood. So your hood can close. Sort of. Then you're going to find out that your gas cap hits. As you can see, mine doesn't rub. But if you come over to my hood, come on, focus, you'll see there's a bump right there. That's because I beat the shit out of it with a hammer and made a big dent upward. That way my hood would close, because I don't want to cut my hood. And there's the cutout. What else here with this motor swap? Your pulleys. Okay. Now, if you try to keep your engine mounted low, your pulleys are going to be too low. Right now, as mine sits, it's got a little bit of a slant down, which is what you want for it to clutch right. You get the motor down lower, well, you're going to have to run a smaller pulley to keep the belt angled correctly. You go down too low, well, then your belt's going to be coming upwards. Nothing's going to clutch right or anything. So you have to raise the engine, no matter what you do. The other thing, once you move the gas tank over, I'm running an 8-inch pulley. I can't go any bigger. Gas tank's in the way. So, I mean, that's it. I'm limited to an 8-inch. I could probably squeeze an 8.5. But, you know, I like to have a little room to work on things. Well, as you can see, there's the bolts for the gas tank that I had to modify from the factory mount. Now, the other thing you're going to run into, depending on how you mount your engine, servicing it. This right here is your oil fill. This is my battery. That right down there is the drain plug, and here is the other drain plug with the filter. So yeah, when I have to change oil, which I'm gonna do now because I have this apart, Got to pull the battery, got to pull the side steps off, got to pull all the belt guides off, everything. It's the only way you can get to it to service it. And it makes a mess too, because it's all going to run down on your motor mounts and shit, because you can't get anything in there. Yeah, it sucks. So there's another downside to doing this motor swap. The exhaust. Yeah, you're going to have to make an exhaust, because the factory one's not going to work at all. That whole factory muffler thing. Unless you want to cut gigantic holes all through your hood, this will be an easy swap if you want to do that. And have a hood that just flops around, well then sure. Go for it. I just didn't want to cut my hood. I wanted to keep things as stock as possible. So, for your exhaust, what I did is I actually went to my local lawn and garden dealer, 310 Lawn and Garden. They gave me a couple of junk exhausts that they had off of repowers that they had there. And I found one that fit, sort of. I had to cut the flanges out, and then I welded up my own exhaust. Made it to clear the hood. And anybody who's been following on my channel knows that this is the second exhaust I've had on this, so. But yeah, that's the other thing you're going to have to deal with. The factory exhaust, not going to work. Alright, so overview. Is a 459 swap worth it? Yes and no. I think it's a good engine. I do. I've got 50 plus hours on this engine. Runs great. It rips, it tears, it's got great torque. It's snappy. Serviceability is so horrible on it. There's just no room. I mean, it's a big motor. I could have done things different, relocated the battery somewhere else, you know, made things a little better, but it's the way I built it. Oh, the air thing. Once you do this air intake setup, again, I'm still running the stock carb. Once you put one of these air intakes on it, it's not going to run for shit. You have to rejet your carb. I rejetted mine up to a 140. It ran okay at a 130. Actually, it ran pretty good at 130. I was just afraid it was a little too lean, so I went up to a 140. So I always have to choke mine, whether it's hot or cold to start it, just because it's running rich. Which is probably part of the reason why I go through a lot of gas. I only get about 3 hours out of a tank of gas, which is, what is this, 2.5 gallon tank, if that. So, there's that. The other downside is these things have no charging system. Well, they do, but it might as well be none. And mine does run an electric start. I am running LED lights. And I do have a winch. I haven't ran it dead yet, but boy, I've ran it really low. So, yeah, I mean, there it is in a quick overview. If anybody has questions, you know, more in-depth detail, you know, send me a comment and I'll try and reply. But yeah, that's how I did my Predator 459 swap into a wheel horse. So, till next time, guys, this is Road Toad Racing. Later.